Monday this week, September 21, was International Day of Peace. This year's theme, Shaping Peace Together, coincides with the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, which on its own is a product of the global search for enduring peace. Critically, forging and maintenance of world peace at this time seems to have come under a lot of strain because of COVID-19 and various measures being adopted by different countries to stem its spread. Protocols like the long-standing closure of the international air routes, reciprocatory policies on travel documents, coupled with a diplomatic row between the United States and China over the origin of the virus, continue to present avoidable challenges to global peace. For a more detailed look at this matter, we are now being joined from Arise Abuja studio by Paul Ejime, an international affairs expert and a consultant to international organizations, including ECOWAS and the European Union on Development, Communications, Peace and Security, and the media. Paul Ejime, good morning and welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. Paul, are you with us?
Thank you, my brother, Ruben.
Yes, good morning.
Yes, I am. Thank you, my brother, and then my sister, and then my other brother there. Well, that is three to one. I hope I will be able to cope.
You'll be fine. You know, this is not an inquisition. Okay. It's a conversation. Now, very quickly, I mean, is our world safer today than it was, say, 2 decades ago or 75 years ago, since we are also celebrating the 75th anniversary of the UN? And how, in your opinion, has COVID-19 contributed to the disruption of global peace and security?
Well, hugely. In a very, I mean, it has touched every region of the globe, and then touched both the high and the mighty, as well as the lowly. So that is what I call ironic equilibrium. I mean, for once, the rich also cry. So the death has not spared anybody. The affliction has not spared anybody. We're talking now about more than 31 million people afflicted, and then close to, I mean, 930 or 940, more than that, 1,000 deaths. You know, that is not, really a small thing by all means. But you see, the greatest thing, they call it nouveau, that is new. And that is what has really, it came on us by surprise. Even the advanced countries were not prepared. Everybody seems to be scampering, trying to catch up and see how far. You have seen what the U.S. is grappling with, recording close now to 200,000 deaths. So it's not, something that anybody can take lightly. But of course, like I also have noted, peace is not the absence of war or crisis or challenges or conflicts. It's actually the ability to develop the attribute and the skills to be able to manage them. Crisis or conflict is part of life. So life is about crisis management. How the world has done in this place differs from country to country, but on the whole, there has COVID-19 has brought with it a very heavy devastation of life and property, and then security. Because you need to be, alive, you need to be healthy to begin to pursue, the challenges of life. It has disrupted it. It has disrupted everything. The economy is in bad shape. Politics, many countries are either shifting elections, or some countries have also, some governments have fallen, even from the poor management of COVID-19, and perhaps many will also fall. It's still early days because vaccine is not, there are so many candidate vaccines on the road. People are rushing to see who will come out with the one that will be effective and then safe. So that is the key word. And until that happens, we are dealing with protocols of, you remember that recently, it was only recently that the world is now lifting air travel. People couldn't move around. There is physical or social distancing. There is hand washing and hand sanitizing. And schools cannot reopen. Worship centers have been affected. Everybody is, been affected one way or the other. So that is where we are. And so it depends now, how do we manage and then exit this pandemic? But exit it we will, but at what cost? That should be the question.
Well, we certainly will, sir. I want to talk to you about the significance of the International Day of Peace. The late Kofi Annan described it as a day where there will be a global ceasefire in all armed conflicts, and the combatants can really reflect on what they're doing. So has it been effective in that particular regard? How would you rate the level of awareness? And have there been other unintended but beneficial consequences of having one day to commemorate world peace?
Well, it's been a mixed bag since 1981 that the UN came up with it. It has caught on, and then every year, usually, originally it was the first week of September. Now they moved it to 21st of September. So there is that, it's not question of awareness, but how do you now, like I said, how do you manage? Because let's not be, naive about it. To contemplate a world that will be, where you won't have conflict, where you won't have challenges, where you won't have crises, where you won't have health issues. But you will have them. So, but the challenge now, the key will be, how do you manage all this? Even every minute, every month, every day, and every year. This year, unfortunately, it is COVID-19. In previous years, remember, we have had natural disasters, floods, and then there is climate change. So UN, they have been there. The fact that they have stayed 75 years, perhaps succeeding, if you remember, the League of Nations. But these are all products of, the search for world peace. League of Nations was after the First World War, 1914 to 18. And then, UN now succeeded it and, from 1946, and it's been, moving from fighting, peacekeeping that is there. It's been doing sustainable development. If you remember that there were goals, millennium goals now moved to sustainable development goals. And it has WHO, which is also fighting health issues. It has the World Bank, but let me remember that is also part of an affiliate of the UN. And then, World Food Program, and then UNESCO, UNICEF, children. So it has this basket of trying to address issues that touch on well-being. And one of them is to make sure that we are safe, you remain in a peaceful place so that you can pursue all the life endeavors that will bring in a peaceful manner. But it hasn't been easy. Cannot be easy. Starting from the family, nuclear family, to society, to communities, nations, organizations. Like I don't think you will say that IRISE doesn't have some challenges that it's dealing with. So it cuts across. You have to deal with it from day to day. The measurement will now depend on what is the success in trying to manage. It's not that there will not be challenges or there will not be issues that threaten peace or threaten stability, or threaten health, or threaten. There is also human rights issue. UN has been involved in humanitarian issues, moving, anywhere there is a crisis, they try to move. But we will go one after the other in terms of how they have fared in all these places, because it's a basket of, I will call it a mixed basket of some, successes, but there have also been some failures. Remember, if in peacekeeping, for instance, remember in Africa, let's come home. They started from the Belgian Congo. It used to be Belgian Congo. UN went there. Some of our elder people will tell you about the Congo War. They went there. UN didn't quite acquaint itself creditably there. It has also moved from there. It went to the DR Congo, from Congo, Belgian Congo to DR Congo. It's been there. It went to Rwanda. Rwanda was a disaster because they were there. And by the way, it was also our own Kofi Annan, bless his soul, that who later became Secretary General for 2 terms. He was the one that was in charge of peacekeeping. But they didn't perform very well because they allowed the genocide to happen. Genocide that killed almost 1 million people. And then, but also, UN has also come in Liberia, in Somalia, in Sudan. I'm talking about Africa now. Mali, they are there, about 15,000, they are still there. But you will also ask the question, if you have that kind of level of deployment, why did the recent coup happen? And why is all this in Cote d'Ivoire? So there has been, it's mixed. And I know you will also go to the issue of how equitable or what is the level of benefit that Africa, by the way, is now constitutes about 16 to 17% of the world population. World Meta puts it about 1.3 now, and says that in 2050 or thereabout, we are moving, we are growing very fast, more than other regions. We are the second now after Asia, but 2030, 2050, Africa is likely going to bloom and get up to above 4 billion. And that is the challenge. These are issues that Africa will have to deal with. But I'm going to the issue of if Africa constitutes that amount, that is the percentage it has. How has it been played how is it playing at the UN? That is the issue of reforms there, because restructuring, well, if you permit that word. Because here are those taking the critical organs, the Security Council still has 5 permanent members, and then there are 15. 5 are permanent with veto powers, and then 10 on a rotational basis. After 2 years, they go there. But Africa, with this population and being the second in the region, in all the 6 continents, why has Africa not been able to go to that permanent seat? It's an open-ended question. So those are the reforms that will take place. But also, what about the effectiveness of all the organs of the UN in Africa? In fighting of disease, malaria, for instance. Malaria is as old as history. I know they have global, organizations that are tackling it. But the question will also be, why has there not been any vaccine to deal with malaria? Which is killing people. About 30 seconds or so, somebody is dying in Africa from malaria. Pregnant women and children under 5. So those are the unanswered questions where the challenges come. And in terms of peacekeeping, it hasn't been very successful. I have cited cases. UN is not known to be the track record is not very good in terms of peacekeeping. Because, for instance, they are still in Cyprus since 1965. They haven't gone. And then in other places, if you leave them, because the idea, well, they would cite the operational, the mode of operation, that they are acting under a mandate, even with Chapter 7, which allows them to use force to, cause force enforcement. Because we are dealing with conflicts now. You need to really bring enforcement, not just peacekeeping, and waiting. As soon as you hear the first gunshot, you evacuate thousands of people. And that is, if you allow me, I'll go into why that is so. It is because UN cannot take casualties. Because because insurance companies are paying for those peacekeepers, by the time you kill one or two, you pay from through your nose. So they are not going to allow that. And then, who are the people in the UN for, peacekeeping forces? They are populated by all manner of, from different countries, but who are the ones supplying them, who are gaining from it? The industry, defense industry in the West and America, they are the ones supplying them vehicles and all the assets that they use. So those are the areas that you need to question. And then in terms of sustainable development, fighting poverty. Poverty is almost synonymous with Africa. Poverty, disease, and that has UN organizations, have they, with all their engagements, have they been able to stop poverty? Unfortunately, no. And so that is where they still have, after 75 years, they still have their job cut out for them. And so they need to do more. And Africans themselves, African countries should come together to assert their own authority. And then get positions that are commensurate with their population. And then the resources that Africa has, which others are scampering to come and get. Gold, you know, all manner of things, diamond, you know, bauxite. Africa is there. It has the population, human capital, and then material resources. How what happens is that some of these countries come in and then they exploit it, and then they move away. Nothing happens. UN again it's not been effective in making ensuring compliance with its rules. It appears it has different rules for different people. For instance, U.S. and Israel, they never respect whatever decisions or resolutions that UN has passed. So it's a case of unequals, partnership of unequals. But some African countries, they dare not do that. They will have the hammer slammed on them. But why do you, for instance, in the court, the international court that is set up, the UN nationals cannot be tried by that. But still, U.S. and others, they will want other countries to be tried. So these are some of the rough edges that needs to be you know, strengthened, leveled, to be able to have a UN that was set up for international peace and human rights, to be able to deliver on it, and then make sure that there is a peaceful world. It's a long shot, but I think it's a collective responsibility.
I mean, brilliant analysis there. But in all of this, you've talked about the UN. We've been shown the way. And I keep going back to René Cassin, you know, that did a lot of work as regards the establishment of human rights, Declaration of Human Rights, and he pillared that on the Cassin's Potico, you know, areas of fairness and the likes. But why isn't the UN using that document, you know, as a sort of like a lead in most of their relations? You know, you talked about the strength of America, for instance. You talked about how even the politicization of the Security Council of the UN and things like that. Why can't the UN use a very important document, you know, hinged on great pillars of societal justice to lead all its affairs all over the world?
Well, an organization is as strong or effective as its weakest or the strongest member. Weakest because the weak ones will draw you back, and then the strong ones will even try to move as faster than the others can move, or even impose their power. The U.S. is on a world of its own. That is why it can afford, it will tell you that it's contributing so much to it, to the UN, so they will want to leverage that and make sure that they maximize whatever benefits comes from there. That is why President Trump will say, well, that UN is pulling out from WHO, they are pulling out from WTO. At one point, it was Britain and others talking about moving away from UNESCO, and then you are begging them. Because, well, but they also forget that some of these, look at World Bank, for instance. the first loans that were and efforts that were done in the mid-50s were to reconstruction. After the World War, the Second World War, it was to help rebuild the economy of Europe. So it's not, Africa has been talking about what looks like a Marshall Plan for development. Nobody is listening to that, because the voice is muffled or does not. When you are not negotiating from a position of strength, that is what happens. UN, like I said, what can it do? The 5 members that have vetoes, they can veto whatever you do. The General Assembly, they are already meeting now. It's just an assembly. Its decisions, most of it are not binding. And even the ones from the Security Council that are binding, the veto power wielding people can also make sure that it doesn't happen. For instance, look at Gaddafi was more or less killed because NATO and others came, rallied forces, and what was his crime? They say because he was hard on the opposition or rebels. But look at what about Syria today and President Assad? They have killed more people in that place than anybody has ever done in Africa. But what has happened? What has happened to Syria? Because Russia and others are pulling from in fact, it's a continuation of the Cold War, where, at times dictators, it doesn't matter. These two countries, they were supporting people that, even if they were the worst leaders. It's a continuation. They can't see anything bad there. They cannot. U.S. What you call the balance of power. One is serving as a deterrent against the other. U.S. cannot move all its allies to do something in Syria because Russia is intervening. So that is the challenge that they have. And if you remember, well, by the way, 2 of our African sons, Brutus Ghali and Kofi Annan, they have headed the UN as Secretary General. But how did they perform? They were not, at one point, the heat was too much on Kofi Annan. His telephones were tapped, everything. They went after his son. US senators were after him. Why? Because he was towing a line that is not, consistent with what US was saying or doing. That is the challenge. The big powers will not allow the UN to bring that social justice or equilibrium or equality that we are talking about because of their interests. It's a case of enlightened self-interest. The big powers, they know how to, rob you rob my back, I rob your back. But that is at the expense of developing countries like you have in Africa and Asia. So those are the ones that are paying the price for, so that is what it is. They are the ones that set up the UN, and they define how it functions or how it does not function. And until there is even the restructuring, even when an African country gets a veto power, but the suggestion is that really veto power should be jettisoned. But even when an African or an African country becomes a permanent member, permanent in the sense of permanency, will that change anything? It remains to be seen. So, but there are bottlenecks. UN has what they call rules of engagement, the mandate. It's written out. They don't want to exceed that. No matter the zealousness, the enthusiasm, and whatever zest you bring to performance, by the time you stay you remember you have to function from the US. And then they are there monitoring you. If you come against them, they will fire back and then come at you. So that is the situation. Yeah,
on the United Nations, I mean, the basic foundation of the UN is multilateralism. 75 years after, people are still wondering whether the UN is a successful experiment or not, given the dictatorship of the veto-wielding 5 that you talked about. And as you yourself admitted, there's no guarantee that opening up the Security Council would necessarily ensure equity or equality given the imbalance in global relations. But let us bring all of this back home. I mean, multilateralism, unilateralism, which is now dominating, is a question we can debate for the whole day. But here in Nigeria, how do we ensure sustainable peace? Only yesterday there was a conference at Kadivest, the Kaduna Investment Summit, and one major issue there was peace. President Buhari was saying, let us all come together because there can be no development without peace. But Sokapu, the Southern Kaduna People's Union, and the Christian Association of Nigeria said, no, the issue is not just about development. There can be no peace without justice. So what should we do in Nigeria to share peace and shape peace together?
Very loaded question, but I will attempt. Well, the key thing is about governance. Governance covers a lot of all things, you know, security, it covers economy, it covers politics, it covers relationship, it covers human rights, it covers, how ethnic, we have ethnic groups, we have some call it tribes or whatever. Even Europe, they have that. But how do we agree to disagree? That is the issue. And that boils down to that, the ground norm, the Constitution. This thing has to be written there. What we have now is something that was, imposed or given to us by the military, the 1999 Constitution. There has been so much talk about restructuring and whatever. But you need to get it right. Let it be there. It's not to say that a good Constitution will necessarily guarantee a good governance. But at least it shows a pathway. Remember, in America, their own Constitution, you can hold it in your palm. It talks about everything, First Amendment and everything. And nobody, except President Trump, who can afford to, break all the laws and is still standing. But at least what you do, lay down, have it written down. We are not Britain where you have unwritten constitution. Our constitution is written. So let all this about the relationship, about the cohabitation, because we know we have differences. But we need to bury these differences and then work on things that bring us together. I think that is what the emphasis should be on. How do we harness our similarities and then underplay or reduce emphasis on what is dividing us. Well, thank God you saw the election that just happened. Thank God that not many people, if they were killed at all, not many people were killed. But the Constitution should. I didn't understand why about 3 or 5 governors will leave their own state, leave their constitutional duties in their own states to now relocate to a state because they are holding a governorship election. What does that tell you? You can join them in campaign, but after that you return because you are wasting resources. Having the governor and all the, maybe governance will cease in those places because the governor has gone to where another state governor is being elected. These are some of the things, developmental issues that we need to curtail. Then we look at the electoral laws. We've been talking about reform, electronic voting. If that can be brought in, because it has to do with the ability for you to also change your leadership. That is what democracy is about. Is it easy for you to do that? If it is difficult, that is why some people will want to sit, many African countries will have leaders that sit, sit tight. Or go and tinker with the Constitution to make sure that it favors them. Look at what is happening in Mali. So for Nigeria, back here, we need to have a constitution that is clear, that works, that is unambiguous. That is not to say that you cannot amend. That is the reason there is amendment to laws. If it does not capture the evolution, the dynamism of existence, because life is dynamic, it's not still, it's not static. So, but for a time, over time, have it written that this is what you want to do. Then you now have what you call economic plan. This is where you are going. Where do we want to be in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time? Those are the issues. Then the structure. It's not about government, it's about governance. because governance defines the relationship between the government and the governed. There is a social contract that defines, speaks to what should be the responsibility of each. What should the citizens do in terms of their duty? They have to pay their taxes, they have to abide by the laws, but the government on its own must also reciprocate by providing for the welfare and then ensuring the human rights of the citizens. When these are lacking, that is when you have a breakdown of governance or poor governance. And what the result is that if you make what you call and allow also alternative view. Everybody should not, you don't consider anybody that does not support the government is not an enemy. In England, the opposition is there as a barometer, standing on the heels of, on the toes of government to make sure that in fact, they have a shadow government that will, provide alternatives. So when there is a opposition, the opposition is also not the one that will oppose government in the afternoon, and then in the evening they begin to hobnob with them. So everybody has to, the citizens, politicians, the electoral bodies, the media, civil society, everybody must be involved in this. Wow. And then you talked about, inclusivity, women and the youths. These are it's really, it may sound very complex and complicated, but if you went about it in a systemic and, way, you are likely to get somewhere. One, begin with the Constitution that will define, lay down the rules of engagement, of existence. Once you have done that, and anybody who, the judiciary must also work, becomes the last hope of the common man. But what do we have in the present situation? Nobody is even sure that after you have voted at the polling booth, that the court will not overturn it. Well, these are not things that encourage.
I agree with you, Paul Ejime. Governance is important, and the people also have a role to play. Leadership is also important, so that we can have peace, so that we can have development, and there must be justice, of course. Thank you very much, Paul Ejime, for joining us today on The Morning Show. Thank you.